Hello, my Qcharge podcast listeners and green tech enthusiasts. My name is Sergej Marojevic and I'm your host for today. It has been a while since our last interview, and today we have one very interesting entrepreneur where he settled his vision in Puerto Rico, and not only there. His name is Leslie Hufstetler, and he is a CEO of Infinigen Renewables, a prominent renewable energy platform based in Puerto Rico and backed by Arc Light Capital. Infinigen Renewables is dedicated to developing and operating utility-scale solar and commercial and industrial projects across Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, and North and Central America. With a passionate team focused on sustainable energy solution, Infinigen Renewables is at the forefront of the renewable energy industry. With no further ado, Leslie, thank you for joining us to the show
Thank you,
today.
Sergey. Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, pleasure. It's all mine. And again, thank you for separating time for today's show. So, can you tell us how did you start your venture into the green tech industry, and why choose Puerto Rico? Out of the entire place in this planet, and just in general, how the whole venture of your
So
entrepreneurship.
it's interesting. Back in 2009, Puerto Rico had just enacted a law that would promote the development of utility scale renewable energy systems in an effort to reduce the dependence on fossil fuels and for look of ways also to to comply with the Clean Air Act of the United States, and to promote renewable energy in general. I saw that as a developer. I saw an opportunity to develop this type of project. Quite honestly, I did not know much about the energy business or the energy sector or about renewables. I just saw an opportunity as a I would say as a businessman to try to develop a new emerging industry. So once I partnered with a colleague, and we began to procure a PPOA with the Puerto Rico Electric Power Company. We just pretty much, you know, gathered some information, identified a good plot of land. We went through the requirements to procure a PPA, and we showed up at the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority and said we want to develop a utility scale project with this new law that has been enacted. So it was quite a bold move on our part. We really weren't well connected. We didn't know much about the energy sector, but we said, we have nothing to lose. Let's give it a try. So first meeting we had at the utility was a quite interesting one. I would say there was about 15 people in that meeting, and none of them were very, I would say, motivated to go forward with these projects, because Puerto Rico is an isolated utility where the entire grid is interconnected. Just by itself. There's no other interconnection with other jurisdictions. It's not interconnected with any other system. And for them, they saw it as very challenging to integrate renewables into their system because of the susceptibility of outages, renewable energy being a type of intermittent generation where not only day and night, but also during the day you can have cloud covers which affect the amount of production you have in the grid. So when you have just an isolated system, it is susceptible to these types of fluctuations. So that for them represented a big challenge. So they weren't very, I would say, motivated to promote the development of these projects. It took a lot of conversations, a lot of convincing, explaining to them, look, this is where we are headed, whether we want it or not. So I mean, the sooner you get on board to promote these projects, the better we'll be. And and so it really was a big challenge to get the project going, but finally we were able to convince them to say, let's go ahead and do this. And we developed a 10 megawatt facility in the southern part of Puerto Rico, the town of Salinas. It's in 2009. Soon afterwards,
Leslie, if I may
wow,
jump in quickly, yeah, I
sure.
mean, what are some of the biggest challenges you have faced in developing and operating utility scale solar projects, particularly in regions like Puerto Rico and Caribbean?
Resistance, resistance. The biggest challenge was resistance to change.
So, Leslie,
And
Leslie, where would you say was more of a resistance?
I would say it's everywhere there's the same, Sergey. It's really it's anytime you have a model on any industry, especially a big industry like the energy industry. It's global. It's big, and when you have such a change in the manner in which it's done, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be resistance from the utilities to change. There's going to be resistance from those that are affected by it. Mainly fuel suppliers. And anyone related to the fossil fuel industry, and so that in itself causes a lot of uncertainty, and also, and I would say opposition. I would have to say, because when you have a new model that becomes a threat, then it also affects companies' ability to continue operating as they always have. So yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge has been just the resistance to the change.
So, are you lastly saying that you're also, in a certain way, competitor of the local utilities, or in which essence exactly this is
No,
what
no,
kind?
we're working with the utility because we are a provider. We're an IPP, an independent power producer, where we supply to the grid our production. So we're not competing directly with the utility. We are a provider to the utility. Now, you have to take into consideration that in Puerto Rico, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority was an unregulated, government-owned monopoly. So they pretty much could do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, and any decisions that were made or bad decisions that were made, all you just pass that cost to the consumer. So we had a grid energy generating system that was a model that is outdated, inefficient, very expensive, because at the time most of the production was from diesel generated generators, diesel powered generators, and bunker fuel. So which is today the most expensive source of fuel, and there was a lot of resistance to changing that.
Okay, so also let me, ask you this another question, related to everything that we just discussed, and that is, how do you see the future for green energy evolving, and what initiatives is Infinigen Renewables undertaking, to stay at the forefront of this transformation that is happening, and it's very rapid, as you can see, it's happening in front of us.
So look, if you look at the tendency of the growth of renewables, especially in the solar sector, I mean, it just grows exponentially throughout the world. It's not just in the Caribbean and in the U.S. and North and Central and South America. It's all throughout. Look at Europe. Europe is a continent where most of the countries have embraced renewables. Their generation in renewable sources is in some cases up to 80%. So we're seeing that growth is continuing, and the demand for solar is a lot higher. But I'll speak a little bit, specifically to Puerto Rico, which is I think the area that I dominate the most. In 2019, a law was enacted where 100% of energy generation has to be complied with by 2050. So by 2050, 100% of energy generation has to come from renewable sources. So that puts us at a very aggressive goal. 2050, we're 26 years away from that. Today, we are somewhere around 8 to 9% in renewable generation if we count a rooftop solar, which is gone very has a high demand here as well. So there's a long way to go. Yeah. Well, I'm talking in Puerto Rico, but globally, I mean, it has been from a trend or from something that was an experiment to become globally accepted. It's generally accepted that it works. It's not an experiment now. To the point where banks are comfortable with financing these systems, whether it's rooftop at home or utility scale projects, which require a certain amount of land in order to build them. So it's a reliable and source of energy generation. And to that point, the NREL, which is the National Renewable Energy Labs, with the U.S. Department of Energy, recently commissioned a study, a 2-year study, to determine, number one, whether it was possible to reach 100% renewable generation in Puerto Rico, and create like a path. I would say it's not a recommendation, it's not a mandate, but what would be the path to reaching that 100%? And those results were published I believe, in April, last month actually. And the results were positive, were favorable. They said that yes, it can be achieved. It's an aggressive goal, but it can be done with a combination of different sources of renewables between solar, wind, utility scale, and commercial and residential rooftops. It can be achieved. So I think that is a motivating report that tells us that if we have the will and work towards that, we can absolutely get there.
So to if I understood this correctly, so Puerto Rico mandated the utilization and use of these energy storages as I would guess specifically to being able embedded into these large scale like utility scale solar solutions and systems as a part of it, right? As much as I understand,
It's a
correct?
good question. So it turns out that from the very beginning, in Puerto Rico, we are required to use storage, not as a source of generation, but rather as a source of grid stabilization. So again, because the grid is an isolated grid and it's interconnected, you can have, if you have an outage in one certain area of the island, the whole island can go into a blackout if it's not well in advance, if it's well planned. So here's what happens. If you have a lot of renewable energy at the same time into the grid, all of a sudden it's producing at 100%. You have a cloud cover that covers 80% of your plant. All of a sudden your generation drops to 20%. And then the cloud cover goes away and it spikes back up to 100%. That is very taxing on the grid, and it could cause outages. So we're required to use and the utility mandated what they call minimum technical requirements, which were at the time unique in the world. No other jurisdiction did that. Since then, Hawaii has put them in, and Australia as well, which basically requires you to use batteries in order to, I would say, absorb a certain amount of energy during a spike, and to control the rate at which the energy production is going down. So it's called ramp rate. So that it serves as a cushion for sudden drops or sudden spikes in the system. So the batteries really work to absorb and to generate a certain amount in a short period of time. From there, so we've been using storage systems since 2014 when we built our first plant. Since then, now we're looking at storage as a complement, right, to generation. You can charge batteries during the day and then dispatch for about between a 4 and 6 hour period during peak hours at night. So that also helps stabilize the grid. It also complements the baseload generation, which obviously still exists, and it is growing to the point that Puerto Rico began a process of procuring 3.5 gigawatts of energy or solar energy renewable energy generation, and 1.5 gigawatts of storage. And so this is being divided into 6 different RFPs, which any proponent can come in and propose a project. And we're halfway through that. 3 of them have been carried out. We're still getting some. We're looking at probably 1 gigawatt of generation coming in within the next, I would say, couple of years. And this is an item that the demand is around 3.5 gigawatts. It could, we need more, but it's moving well. It is, being successful.
And what about the maintenance and let's say the upkeep of all these systems? I believe so that there is also a lot of involvement into keeping it up and clean so that you have the full utilization of the solar panels and systems, right? Such as this dust and so on and so forth. I believe so that well, can you explain us actually a little bit of that and give us a bit summary how actually is the, in your vision, and how is that actually accomplished from your side and how you do it?
Yeah, I think in general, right, the main thought is that you just build the solar plant, the panels are there, and you don't have to do anything, right? It's just because there's nothing mechanical about the generation. There's no generators or turbines that are moving. It's just static panels. But there's a lot of electrical components, right? There's inverters, and then the inverters are highly technical pieces of equipment that move energy, and there's a lot and they're digital. So you have to maintain that equipment in optimal condition. And more the batteries at point they need to be replaced at a certain point. You can have some components of the batteries that can go bad, so you have to have a good operations and maintenance team that understand the technology, that understand what needs to be what the predictive maintenance would be, and be ready to execute in that sense. Now, the panels themselves, fortunately here in Puerto Rico, it rains a lot, so we don't have to worry too much about dust collecting. The rain just washes the panels. Over time, though, yeah, and now there's challenges, right? Because it does rain, and then we build on fertile land, so we have a vegetation control um, component that we have to keep the maintenance of that. Now, we don't believe in pesticides to kill the grass, because then we're defeating the purpose of who we are, right, of being environmentally conscious. So we have to constantly be maintaining all of the green areas to keep the growth below the level of the panels, because the growth of the green grass or vegetation cause shading on the panels, so that will affect your production.
And a
We have
quick
found,
question on this,
yeah,
if I
yeah, go
may.
ahead.
So how long is the solar systems like this or panels can last? What is their lifespan, if you can?
Well, it can last as long as you keep it, and so keep it well maintained. I mean, panels, they're guaranteed to produce up to 80% of their original production over 20 years. You're looking at more or less between 0.5% and 1% degradation per year. It used to be 1% per year. Now it's at 0.5%, in some cases, 0.40 of 1%, 0.4 of 1%. So the panels continue to improve, right? The efficiency, the longevity of the panels continue to improve, as well as with the batteries. The batteries, it used to be at 10 years you have to replace them. Now you're getting 20-year warranties on batteries. So technology continues to improve, efficiency continues to improve, the production capability continues to improve. So it's getting better.
And what is your take on bifacial solar panels and systems? How do you see them? Worth?
So bifacials are very good, especially in jurisdictions where you have your location requires you to have your panels at a higher, I would say, angle. Here in Puerto Rico, our panels, because we're close to the equator, they're between 10 and 15 degrees in tilt. So we don't get the benefit of having that much the reflection of the sun hitting on the ground and then reflecting up to the panels. We may get a 2 to 3% improvement in production in that, but say in Europe where you have a 40% tilt on the panels, it definitely, it can give you up to about 20 to 25% more production.
And Leslie, I got a question also. I saw somewhere when I was traveling and going on some of the tech shows, I saw also the solar panels that they are literally see-through and they can be kind of attached to the windows on the high risers, uh, basically kind of converting entire building as a solar plant from all sides. Specifically, do we focus on the side where the
Yeah, I
sun is?
have actually. Yeah, with thin film, for example, that we're seeing buildings that are just installing glass, which also serve as solar panels. We're seeing them even with in homes where roof tiles are also um, solar panels, if you want to call them. And now that technology is in development and it's improving, but what we're looking at, there's so many different options now that you can produce energy that it's cheaper, it's cleaner, it doesn't require, you're not burning any fossil fuels. So again, if we look 10 years back at where we were, and then now we look 10 years into the future, I think that our improvement in the technology is going to continue to grow exponentially. So I'm really optimistic about how research and development is improving the quality of the systems that are being developed.
So, I mean, what advice would you give to another entrepreneurs looking into, starting getting into the renewable energy and venturing the same similar way as you did?
This is a beautiful business. I mean, you're as an entrepreneur, you can make money on it. If you're a socially conscious person and aware of your environment, you're actually doing something to improve the quality of life of today's generation and of future generations as well. We are making an impact and improving the issue of climate change. So this is a good business to get into because it's just you're doing the right thing, as well as having an opportunity to have a successful business venture. Yeah, I mean, if we look back 100, I would say 120, 130 years ago, when we went from coal generation, at your home to heat your home to cook and use wood, you were basically contaminating the air. You were cutting down, deforesting the environment, and then we went into a source of kerosene and fuels. Gasoline was a byproduct of kerosene, and then the industrial age started happening, and then people were dumping their waste into the rivers. It wasn't out of malice, it was just out of ignorance. It just didn't know the impact that would have. Now we know that, right? So we know better. We know that, the impact of contaminating our water systems have, in communities around us. So we've learned and we've created, mechanisms to avoid that from happening by creating other sources of technology that will avoid environmental disasters. I mean, so as we grow more conscious and develop new technologies, we're doing a better job than we were back generations ago, and I'm hoping future generations continue to improve on that.
Well, Leslie, this would be all the time we have for today. And again, thank you very much for joining the show and to give us all this vast knowledge, information, and just general better understanding, I would say, to all these topics. Thank you again very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sergey. Good luck. Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon again.
Likewise, hope we will definitely venture this together again sometime, hopefully very soon. There will be definitely more opportunities, and we would like to definitely hear more of your thoughts and new ventures that might come your way. Thank you again, my listeners. This was all for today. Till
Yep.
next time.